How's it going, guys? Big Blue from Big Blue Gaming here. Today I'm remaking one of my level 60 builds, the Phase and Forget build. You guys really enjoyed it, and I hope you enjoyed the remake. So the first thing you can see, this build still wrecks. First thing I do want to show you, if you are just here for the skill tree, I will put up the skill tree for you here. I have made some changes to the skill tree, and we will go over those here shortly. So one of the major things that you're going to see that is different from the Phase and Forget level 60 build is going to be the Plus Ultra. Since DLC 4, the Plus Ultra has become one of my favorite shields very quickly. The Faulty Star is a great shield, but it has kind of a gimmicky or cheese effect that I don't like. But with the Plus Ultra, it's good for so many different types of builds and so many builds that you can use it in Bloodletter builds, Iron Bear builds, or just flat out I need more health builds. And that's what we used it for here today in Amara. Because the Plus Ultra gives you double your health capacity, it makes it where you're able to survive much longer because of the skill sustainment. So with this skill, all elemental damage you done gives you life steal. So before level 60, this was bugged where you could not get it from kinetic weapons that had an element that you activated an element on it with anointments. But now it actually applies to anointments also, giving you way more life steal with Amara. With the Plus Ultra and sustainment is how we keep our life steal, because we're constantly regenerating that health. As you can see, every time I shoot somebody, I go almost back to full health. And I have that extra health just to have a cushion. Yes, my shields are smaller with this, but I survive so much better. I also do lose about 20% of my shock damage because I was using an old god in the 60 version of this build, but in the 65 I thought we should have more survivability. Another one of the skills that I added to this build is going to be Conflux. So the reason that I added Conflux is because you have a chance to spawn all of the different elements. As you can see from me just attacking that Valkyrie there, I was applying multiple status effects. And with multiple status effects with the skill Harmageddon, you get 5% more damage per status effect that you apply to enemies. This was me trying to squeeze out as much damage as I could from this build, because when it comes to mobbing, this build is a top performer, because you just have to grasp one enemy and you'll do the rest just from there. But when it comes to bosses, it is a little bit more difficult to do that damage, so I do have guns that counteract that and make it easier for you there. The big pickup from the Fist of Elements tree is going to have to be Forceful Expression, because with Forceful Expression I get that 18% increase in damage, elemental damage, and with Amara being an elemental powerhouse, this highly increases the damage that I am doing. The way that you capitalize off of this is if you go back to the beginning of the video and you look at my skill trees, you actually can use any of the different elements that Amara has in her trees, and that's how you're going to be able to fight bosses better and do more damage to them, is with this Forceful Expression. You may think that it is a pretty weak capstone or it can't do much damage, but in this build it actually helps me do considerable damage with Amara. So this skill is not a new skill to this build, Phase and Forget. Revelation is the skill that ties this whole build together, because Revelation is actually scaled off of action skill damage, and in Mayhem 10 action skill damage is incredible. Plus, over the last week they did increase Nova damage at Mayhem 10, which makes this build even stronger. Without that Revelation skill, you would not be able to do anywhere near as much damage when you're grasping enemies. The reason that works is because I grasp one enemy and ties everyone else together with that enemy, and once it explodes, it kills all the surrounding enemies, and the one that I grasped actually does not die, but my remnant orbs actually come and kill them. If you watched the previous version of this video, you've seen that with those remnant orbs, after I kill one person, I can do max damage very easily. So it's about being strategic and placing your and using your action skill at the right time. If you do use it at the right time in crowds, you can wipe out rooms of people very easily. So I did end up going down here. This was the first time I went down throughout this whole playthrough, And if there's no other enemies around, sometimes it is a little hard to survive. But I'm going to show you this whole clip. Even while I was down, I still did enough damage to down him and continue. If you didn't like this way that I went over the build, I will be doing the whole breakdown of everything. Let's go ahead and go over to that so you guys can see. Alright guys, welcome back. Now we're actually going to go over the weapons, and I'll go over the builds very quickly. So if you remember the level 60 version of this build, I didn't have much corrosion in here, which made it difficult. Before I start on this, actually, one thing I do want to say, whatever your element is on your action skill, you will be weaker to those enemies, but that's why I do have every type of element of weapon here, so you can counteract that to make it easier for you. I have the Gargoyle. I really like the Gargoyle, and with splash damage, it does a lot of damage. It does great damage on Amara because splash damage is converted into elemental damage. It does great damage on Moe's because splash damage is Moe's go-to thing. Next, I have this Bearcat here. I'd never seen a double penetrating cocky Bearcat, and this one had splash damage on it. I picked it up instantly thinking it was going to be a really good gun. Honestly, it's not that good of a gun. It's pretty lackluster. It looks like it would be a great gun with great rolls, but the gun itself is terrible, so I would use something else here. Main two guns that I use in this build is going to be the Flipper. One, because the Flipper does a lot of damage and shoots 8 to 10 projectiles per shot, and I can have two elements on the gun at once, like most Maliwan weapons, of course. But with that, I'm able to have, like, see, I have a fire and shock one here, and I have a corrosive and shock one here. The main thing to do as much damage with your revelation skill as possible is going to be to have that 300% increased weapon damage against enemies above 90% health. That's how you're going to be one-shotting those mobs as you go through them and grab them. I already talked about this earlier, so I won't stay too long on this, but that shock damage is what I'm using, but you could use another element as long as you try to match it most of the time to your action skill element. Spiritual Driver is going to give me that extra elemental damage. I do have one with splash damage, weapon damage, and SMG damage, which is pretty much a really good roll for this gun for me. The splash damage is really good because when I do that revelation skill, that is considered splash damage, so that's going to give me more damage there. Using an elemental projector victory rush, if you use a driver, this is probably the best way to go, to be honest with you. This is how you maximize your damage with it. There are situations where you could use a pearl, but for the most part, it's going to be an elemental projector. Victory rush is just, it makes it even better because I get that 18% movement speed and damage for 60 seconds after killing somebody. So that's nice. And this is another big thing that I changed in this build, actually. So I changed this from, excuse me, from incendiary damage to on grenade throw. I get that action skill damage, which applies to revelation, weapon damage. The grenade damage doesn't matter as much, but that action skill damage and weapon damage is what I need. Alright, I said I would do a quick overview of the actual skill tree. Like I said, not much really changed in this skill tree. The only things that I really changed are going to be, I added more points into helping hands here. If you did want to take these points out of Samsara, because it doesn't proc all the time, to be honest with you, and you want to try to get a little bit more splash damage, I'd take these three and put those into arms deal. Probably help you do even more damage with that grasp. In this tree, I didn't change a single thing. I added nothing. This tree is exactly as it was before. Last but not least, Fist Elements tree. Like I went over during the video, I did add these 2 points into Conflux, and I came down to get this point into Forceful Expression. I did also add one more point into Sustainment because I switched that shield to that Plus Ultra to try to make it where you had a little bit more survivability and you were leeching more life every time you shot an enemy. Another reason I use the Flipper is because it has those 10 projectiles that all do incredible damage, so it helps you get your health up really fast. Well guys, that's all I have for this build. I really hope you guys enjoyed Phase and Forget 2.0. Blue Crew, as always, stay medicated, stay elevated. If you're not subscribed to the channel, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Join the Blue Crew, stay updated to all of my newest builds and my revamped builds. To the next video, guys. Peace.